You're listening to New England Real Estate Journal Radio with Rick Kaplan, New England source for commercial real estate news. This is New England Real Estate Journal Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
Welcome to the New England Real Estate Journal Radio Show. I'm Rick Kaplan with Eric Wilson, and we have in the studio with us today is Howard Goldman of Goldman and Pease law firm. They handle real estate and litigation, and Howard's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the exposures to winter weather for condominiums and property, I would assume.
Absolutely. You know, it's so cold out, and along with the cold are slip and falls. So we get a lot of important and new cases to talk about.
Nice. Well, that's going to be interesting because we are in the winter weather.
We are.
and today we had some a good speaker that we saw this morning.
Yes, we did. We went to the IREM economic forecast.
And he was talking about the economy.
He was.
For 2015.
Things are looking good up. He said one of his quotes was, "The future is so bright, I'm going to need shades." But he was talking a lot about how the inflation stayed the same over the last 4 years, and there's no horizon. I don't expect that to go up. How wages have kind of stayed the same as well over the last 8 years.
Lower oil prices?
Yeah, lower oil prices, he said, but that's only for a while.
Till it gets to like $30 a barrel, and then it might.
Never gets
that's
lower than that.
Probably when it will start going back up.
And but he said that some of the great things that we really learned about was when he broke it down to the New England market and what's been going on, and especially with the commercial real estate trends and how booming the multifamily section is. And I mean, we see it all the time driving into the city, how they're adding new apartment buildings, they're putting up new condo. But just to see it from, a national economic.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little concern about the single-family home, the construction of single-family home. That's very stagnant right now.
Well, it says because, one, we don't have a huge labor force because it's so expensive to live here. So you don't have people buying those homes, with the $1+ million homes like we used to in the 80s. Is basically what it's comparing it to.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of new construction of commercial, residential. The city of Boston is loaded with all kind of cranes with new construction. Mm-hmm. I think the towns see an opportunity to raise some real estate taxes as well.
Yeah, well, he did say that most developers that are working with a single or condominiums, they're looking for the high-end projects.
Because
those people have the money.
Right.
They don't have to worry about it.
Did you see they announced in Boston they're going to build the largest high-rise in the past 50 years?
Yeah, that's right by Boston Garden, isn't it? Yeah. I think we were invited.
We're doing big things.
Yeah, we were invited to that groundbreaking.
Yes,
I think we were doing our radio show at the time.
We were in studio.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of things going on in the city.
Right, and they were also saying that office space is coming to a halt. That the vacancy for office space is going to go up, which he didn't really say was a good thing for us. But he did say that.
You mean the occupancy rate's going to go up?
No,
vacancy.
Oh.
Office space vacancy.
Yeah.
Retail and multifamilies are the ones that are going to go up, and vacancy is going to drop from those. And he said that you'll have, because of the labor force, you'll see jobs, because wages haven't gone up, that the more labor force we bring in, the more competitive these wages are going to have to be in order to get somebody to come work for you. And that will really help out the single-family homes, is what he thinks Boston needs to do in order to be more competitive with the Silicon Valleys and stuff like that. But he did say Manchester, New Hampshire, a lot of people are escaping to New Hampshire right now from all over the country.
Less taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said that Rhode Island, Connecticut, and even like our Worcester, Springfield really suffer from the amount of money it costs to live in Boston.
Although he did say Hartford is doing the right things there.
They are.
So
he did say, because they're competing with the Worcesters and Springfields and all those at their rent levels, and not what Boston is, where people can't from outside our country really come move here, even if they have a college education, because the starting point is so expensive to live here.
Hey, I'm wondering, did the economists factor in the potential of the Olympics in a couple of years if Boston's successful?
No, I don't think he didn't go that far ahead. But I mean, that would have been a really good question. You should have attended, Howard.
I know, I wish I was there, boys. I wish I was there.
What mostly people talked about was the national debt, how that's going to or how that's going to fare, and also the big topic here in Boston is raising the minimum wage. He talked more about that, And he said, if you do one, it's not even the problem. Yes, you could raise $1 and no one would really have an impact on that because that doesn't put money in the people's hands that you need. He was saying that there needs to be income credit for those people at the end of the year, some kind of tax rebate, as well as giving them
Which I thought was a very good idea.
I did too.
Yeah.
So
that gives people incentive to have to go out and work.
Get a full-time job,
Right.
and that's what the whole...
Well, with Charlie Baker in office, I think we may see some tax reform.
Yeah, I would assume he's going to do a lot of reform on a few things. I know he jumped on the BRA and all that, and I assume that he's going to do the same for pretty much everything we do.
But, you brought up a good point, Howard, about the Olympics.
Yeah.
I wasn't even going to go into it, but I want to go into it a little because, I'm kind of curious what the two of you think about how that's going to affect. How are they going to pay for that? What kind of infrastructure problems we're going to have? And, who's going to pick up all of the bill, the tab?
Well, I think it has such a draw, international draw. I think that we'll be seeking sponsors that were willing to brand their name to the Olympics. Boston certainly doesn't want to pay, and the amount of security costs. Wow, it's like mini marathons, Boston Marathon.
Right.
So big cost, but I think corporate sponsors internationally will step up if Boston is lucky enough to get it.
Right. I think the infrastructure, travel will be kind of difficult because the city's tough to... It's a great walking city, but driving city, it's not that great, especially if they space things out. But we do have so many universities.
Right.
So, and it's going to be during the summer.
But do you think it's going to affect the overall economy of
I don't think you'll see it initially, but like most things, you may see it 10 years down the road. Trickle-down effect from...
And what about the
suburbs?
suburbs?
I plan to rent my house out and leave for a week or so.
Well, see, it's going to help Howard.
Right, so there's a business plan that anyone can adjust to.
No, I think it's very exciting. I think that it's unique with the universities and there's so much space that they have. As you mentioned, Eric, in the summertime, the kids won't be there, students. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity. The leaders, they seem to be very innovative and thoughtful about how to get Boston chosen.
Right, and we're
exciting.
a very international city, too, with the college and schools and everybody coming over here. So I think that we're a great place for it. I really do, and especially if you can spread it out to maybe, just outside Boston and use greater Boston, the whole area, with all the colleges there and universities. You can get all your events. The Garden you'll be able to use because...
Well, I would think they would have to spread it out. I don't think they could fit everything right in the city.
Right.
So it would have to be spread out somewhat.
It's going to also boom more construction. You're going to have to build a stadium, in order to host the opening ceremony, things like that. I think there's a lot of benefits. But again, I could be biased because I'm an optimist at heart, so I tend to look at the good stuff and not the bad stuff.
That's good.
So I'm pushing for the Olympics.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you.
No, I think it might be a good thing. Although I saw some kind of survey
also...
they had that it was a higher percentage of people that thought it was going to be a bad thing for the city.
Well, it's interesting. I know somebody who is a owner of a nice pub here in Newton, and felt that having the Olympics was going to compete for labor, and they'll be on the short end. That the Olympics will probably pay more, and they'll be having more difficult to get labor in the suburbs.
Yeah, I would also say that you would have. That's just people worried about their own day-to-day commutes or whatever else in traffic.
Right.
They're not thinking about the good things like, we're going to get our roads fixed finally, maybe. I mean, you can't have an Olympics if people can't drive to it if everyone's breaking down. So maybe they'll clean that up.
Yeah, but I think people also understand that when the government's involved in things, a lot of the things that are promised and said
as of recently,
don't always happen.
We don't have a huge approval rating of what we think our Congress is. And that's also pessimistic-minded. I think a lot of things have to do with the way we feel about it. Like if when we're in a recession and you tell somebody, we're about to be in a recession, people tend to tighten up their pockets. They get nervous. But when you tell them, we're out of it, they loosen it up. But they don't really have any idea whether or not we were in a recession or not because you really feel that on the grand scale. For me, as a regular employee, I don't feel the recession as much as someone who maybe employs me. You know what I mean? Because I'm still getting my same wages that I was getting the same year in 2008. You might not get your raise in 2009, but you don't feel it as dramatically. So I think that you know.
Well,
again,
we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
opinions in the mind of people makes a huge difference.
Well, we got to go to a break. I want to thank our sponsors for the NEREJ radio show, the City of Marlborough, Mass. We also want to thank the City of Hartford, Connecticut, and City of Warwick, Rhode Island, and our new sponsor, Comstack. Which
Shout out to Michael Mandel. He was a guest on our show. Great guy.
They'll be coming on our they'll be on our show this year.
You have a strong base at all those different states. Wow.
Yeah.
Things are growing for the publication.
We're going right to the top, Howard.
We are.
It's for good reason.
Now,
for good reason.
Boston.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we've been inviting Mayor Walsh onto the show. We haven't had him on yet.
Right.
We're going to get him on here one of these days. Or John Barrows.
Hey, goals for 2015.
Yeah,
right?
John Barrows also. If you're listening to the show or someone that knows John Barrows, tell him he has to come on the NEREJ radio show.
He'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, people want to hear what's going on in the city.
Right.
We talk about other cities. We got to talk about the city of Boston.
I hear you.
With my accent, we should have someone from the city of Boston.
And your look today.
And my look.
He's very salty. He has the leather coat on and the
I'm salty today.
Yeah, you look pretty tough.
So when we come back from our break, we're going to be talking with Howard Goldman from Goldman and Pease Law Firm. They handle real estate and litigation, and we'll talk a little bit about the winter weather, how it affects property.
Right, snow and ice and all the liability associated with that.
And we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
The next level in commercial real estate. This is New England Real Estate Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with Eric Wilson, and we have sitting in the studio with us is Howard Goldman of Goldman and Pease Law Firm, and they handle real estate and litigation. Howard's going to talk a little bit about how to avoid exposure to the winter weather and how an attorney would help you with that. I mean, can you stop the weather?
No, we can't stop the weather, but there's a lot of things we can do to help to prevent liability from slip and fall. A couple of years ago, recently, the Supreme Judicial Court came out with a new decision regarding slip and fall. It's called the Papadopoulou versus Target. And that's a case where a person was shopping at Target, came back out to his parking lot to go into his car, and he slipped and fell and broke a number of bones and was out of work for a long time. And Target, and so the guy who slipped and fell, the plaintiff sued Target and said, hey, you didn't do a good job to clean your parking lot. And this was, of course, in the winter. And Target said, well, we did. We have a service that came out frequently. And, in fact, in this particular place where you fell, we had snow plowed it and looked pretty good. But what happened was that they had piled the snow, and then it had melted, and then it had iced over. So the person slipped on ice. And prior to this court decision, the test for owners of property or business owners was whether there was an unnatural accumulation of snow and ice. And the SJC said it's no longer that distinction. We're going to eliminate natural versus unnatural and really focus on whether the property owner exercised reasonable care for lawful visitors to maintain the property in a reasonable, safe condition in view of all the circumstances. So it's a lot of words, and we can break it down. But what the bottom line was, the distinction that the court made, was it no longer requires an unnatural accumulation of snow and ice. It could be natural, that landowners and property owners have an obligation to keep their property, their sidewalks, their driveways, and passageways free from snow and ice within limits and relating to the circumstances. So, for example, if a company operates like Target did, a commercial facility with thousands, hundreds of thousands of cars and high expectation of traffic, Target and any commercial facility like that has a higher burden to do more, to sand, to shovel, to snowplow on a regular basis. Whereas if you're just a single property owner and only have 2 or 3 people in your house, certainly there's an expectation that you can do less. And not nearly as much as a commercial vendor, but you still have an obligation to remove the snow and to make sure that it isn't slippery, and that's ongoing.
So I'm not following completely. So you're saying that if they do they're plowing and they salt everything, and after doing all that, some ice freezes over again. Like there's a drip in the off of the snow mound, and it's piling
That's exactly
up
what happened in that Target case, yeah.
And someone comes along and they slip. Now they're entitled to sue the landowner? Or the property?
It's definitely more difficult for owners of property. And so you no longer need something unnatural. Yes, so in the case of Target, that's exactly what happened. And so the takeaway from that court case is that property owners, especially in high-density areas, or if you, for example, say operate a nursing home where your people are frail and there's a greater foreseeability that they can slip and fall, there's a heightened duty to have more effort, salting, sanding. Most large companies have snowplow companies, professionals, and they have written contracts that outline when, how frequently, and at what cost these vendors come out to clean the properties. There was a recent case, a condo case. It was a residential condo of roughly 40 units, and the property manager had barrels of salt surrounded appropriately, and that's what's needed. So people can sort of self-help and regulate. But what the property manager did in that case was he locked the boxes because people were either maybe taking it themselves, who knows what, but just basically that they were spending too much on the salt mix. And he locked it up, and somebody slipped and fell. And so that was the negligence, that they could have done more. So if you have a property of middle to average size, you should think about having salt buckets available. Lighting is important. If it's dark, it needs to be better lit. If it's an area where it's high transit, many instances take place where certain things are covered. For example, if someone has to take the garbage out themselves in a condo complex, and the snowplow company has piled all the snow in front of it, so you kind of have to do an acrobatic move to get to the garbage, and they slip and fall. Well, they should have done a better job. So you have to keep the passageways open and salted and well lit.
What about, that makes all sense to me. What about when they pile up, like, grocery stores, something, they'll go out and plow, but they'll pile it all up into one area that you may have to leave. Is there any rules on, like, why wouldn't they just pick the snow up and put it in the back
So
of
you're
the truck?
saying if you're leaving from driving out of the parking lot and you can't see oncoming cars?
That's a great point. So in addition to slipping and falling, if the snow is stacked too high, like in large developments, heavy snow, you have to put it somewhere, and you're trying to exit, and you're looking left and right, and this large snow pile is blocking your way, and then somebody smashes into you because of that. That's another form of negligence and liability to the business owner.
Yeah,
and what's interesting in the commercial context, there's an allocation in the lease between the landlord and the tenant. So if it's a large enough tenant that the landlord pushes down the responsibility to maintain these common areas free of the snow and ice. But if you're the victim and you slip and fall, you're going to sue both the landlord, who owns the property, as well as the tenant who is managing it. And from a plaintiff's point of view, you have now two pockets to which to try to resolve the case. It's interesting. A lot of towns and cities, Boston, Worcester, Woburn, have specific ordinances that require you to remove snow in certain time frames. And Boston's the toughest. It says that within 3 hours of the end of a snowfall, you have to clear your sidewalks. Most other towns have certain restricted areas only, high density areas, and don't really stick it on the property owner. But so you need to be mindful of local ordinances, and that forms the basis or standard for negligence.
But I sort of get kind of upset when I hear stuff like this, because now the person that slips, or the person that moves out of the parking lot and doesn't take the responsibility of making sure there's no oncoming traffic, that's their responsibility.
Man, you're always victim blaming.
No, I'm not. I know, but why should the property owner
Well, no, you're right. No,
Well,
you're
what
right.
I'm saying is, we're not saying that you don't look left and right before you pull out. I'm saying I've left grocery stores where I have to inch until half my car is out in the main road just to see down what's going on.
No, and I know,
and those things.
right, I agree with that. But the thing is that why is that the property owner's responsibility?
Because the snow's on your property and you were gracious enough to own it. Now clean it up.
Yeah, so that's a great point. We highlight something that an owner has made effort to remove the snow, but there's a basic principle of negligence. If you take on a duty, responsibility, and you do it defectively or improperly, you've enhanced your liability. So, but listen, with negligence, it's always a question of comparative negligence. All right, so maybe the driver who was pulling out didn't look, maybe he was on the phone or something talking, or maybe he was turning around to do something in the back. So there's many elements of negligence. It's never a slam dunk, but certainly a large package of snow stacked high is some evidence of negligence. And if it's 6 feet, 10 feet, at some point it becomes too much. When you hire a snowplow contract company, you should look closely at the provisions. But one of the most important provisions is indemnity. If a vendor is doing work for an owner, they have to do it well. And if there's negligence that flows from that, the vendor who's doing the work, the snowplow company, needs to indemnify and hold harmless the property owners. And you need to look closely at these contract for that, because often they try to shift that over onto the property owner. We saw a snow maintenance contract that imposed a 25% premium to snow during holidays, Christmas, for example, any other holiday. So you need to look closely at these contracts to make sure you're getting a fair and reasonable deal, and always make sure there's insurance, that if the vendor is doing the work, you want to see a certificate of insurance stating the amount and naming the property owner as an additional insured.
Right, that's my question. Who's insured in that? Does the tenant hire the plow removal, or is usually the landlord hires the person to take care of the property?
Right. And so, so the landlord, or if it's a large tenant who's responsible for keeping it clean, they go out and hire with the third-party contract, snowplow contractor. And but a lot of these contractors, it could be smaller, they don't have insurance. And so at the end of the day, if there is a slip and fall, as a property owner, as an owner of a facility, you want to make sure you timely report that claim, because the insurance company wants to come out immediately to investigate, take pictures, and if you don't timely notify the insurance company, there's a provision in your policy and you'll be excluded from coverage.
Next question I have, one last one before we get to you, Rick, is
Okay.
The landlord owns the property. He hires a property management company who then hires a snowplow guy. Who do I sue?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Because
the more people are in the line,
the more touches.
pockets?
Yeah, anyone who has a touch to the obligation to remove snow and ice. So it's the property manager who's the hands-on person. He delegates it to a snowplow removal. Both of those parties are liable. And, of course, the owner is ultimately liable because it's his or her land, and he or she has an obligation to maintain it free of these defects. Another thing that comes up is why not post signs saying dangerous or be aware of slip and fall? That doesn't, an open and obvious situation doesn't exclude, it's not exculpatory, and that's sort of affected in that SJC decision. So signs about danger, that doesn't cut it anymore. You really have to make efforts to remove the snow and to ice it and sand it. Now, of course, there's a limited amount of anyone's budget, and cost is an important factor, as is the amount of traffic in that area. So less traffic, smaller development, less need to spend as much.
I would think putting up the signs might not be to your benefit in some cases, because if someone slips and it says danger, slippery, something like that, you already warned them that it was slippery, and now they go walk over there and they slip, because there's people that go out there, believe it or not. There are dishonest people out there.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's a lot of fraud in this, and people sometimes embellish the injuries, and some people that and another component of on a recovery is lost wages. And so if you slip and fall and you can't work, and maybe sometimes embellish those wages. So that's why you want to get the insurance company involved. You should always have insurance, and they have their forces that come into play. But we all know that if you file an insurance claim and there's a payout, your rates will go up.
So if you're looking to buy a property, you should take into consideration the winter and where you're going to put your snow.
Yes, yeah.
And that's going to be a major thing, and especially in New England. You're going to know, okay, I can have all the snow pushed to this
Yeah,
corner.
but what happens, like what happened in Buffalo, where they had, 6 feet of snow?
Because you know what, the community comes together during those.
Yeah, but there's
times.
no place in this area that you can pile up. All, you
Well,
have a
that
big parking lot.
Right, that was going to be my next question. Are you going to see? Is that help the plow guys, because now they may have to bring in a big dump truck in order to dump all the snow inside it and drive it out to the beach like they do with the sand in New Jersey?
And then that happens.
I don't think you can do that anymore.
You
Well,
can't
no,
truck snow out?
Well, that's some of the commercial malls and things. That's exactly what they do. I don't know where they move it to, but they
to the beach, because we drop it off in Marshfield too. They drop it right there. And just,
Do they?
yeah.
I didn't think they could do that anymore because of all the salt.
The salt in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
adding salt to
well,
salt
that's an
water.
interesting point. So the snowplow vendor removes it somewhere, and maybe they don't get permission, and that's another potential. If it's in a wetlands, with protected area, that could create some
Well, they do
additional
have,
liability.
like in the city, I've seen them with these big heat trailers where they dump all the snow into the trailer where it's a heater and it melts right into the storm drains.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen that
And
before.
that's how they remove a lot of the snow in the cities.
Okay.
But, it's I still don't understand how it could still be on the landlord or the property owner where someone is walking along after they did their due diligence and made sure everything was salted and, plowed and everything was clean, but that one little strip of ice that drained down into the parking lot, that person slipped on, now they're getting sued for that.
Well, no, sure. I mean, that's a great question because that property owners are not insurers of. We're in New England. We have snow and ice. That's a given, and so there's a balancing test. When I read that sort of long the definition about circumstances, that it's important to document what you've done. So if you're out there plowing 3 times in one storm, the snowplow company should keep records of that, and that's evidence that you've taken reasonable steps to resolve the problem. And sometimes you're right. It forms, it melts, and then it ices up again. But you kind of anticipate that. So have salt buckets available so people can, with a shovel, and so they can regulate and put salts down themselves, especially in smaller areas, in residential condominiums, for example. People self-help where there even is no manager. And make sure it's lit. If there's railings, hand railings, make sure that they're secure. So if people are about to fall, they have an ability to lean back and to protect their fall.
Well, it's good to know because last year I slipped on the ice at coming out of one of our clients' offices.
Oh, I know. It's hilarious.
So what is there a
Hilarious
statute of
for me.
limitations
Well,
on
yeah,
when
sure.
you can go back?
Statute of limitation for negligence is 3 years.
3 years? Oh, that was
So,
last
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
But
Give me the phone.
The worst part is you don't even know what client it was.
But it's you need more than a bold allegation. So if you slipped and fell, or if you're the owner defending, immediately try to do even your own investigation. Take pictures. Get statements of witnesses at the site. One picture truly states 1,000 words. That's important to document what happened, because if it was snow and ice and you can evidence what was there at the time, that's important. And then make sure those pictures are dated.
Well, I had witnesses because they were all standing around laughing.
Yes.
Hysterical.
It's always funny.
It's
when
always funny to see me
until
fall.
someone really gets hurt, and then it's not. But you weren't hurt. You had a slight bruise on your hip, and you walked it off. But I was thinking more along. So would you have to regrade like parking lots in order to maybe slant away from the main building so that traffic isn't going that way, and that could save you 10 years of worrying about pushing your snow to the back?
Well, that's a good question. So when you're, if you're a developer or you're putting a building on a structure on a property, you would have to take into consideration. I guess they must take into consideration.
And they do. In fact, there are building codes, but you should have drainage formats. So if property is tilted, it should tilt toward drains. And what happens a lot of times, larger developments are done properly. The building department signs off, but sometimes the drains get clogged. They get clogged with ice, or they get clogged with leaves, and that's true for gutters. Everything is in place so that the water drains away. but there's poor maintenance, and maybe there's leaves in the gutters, maybe people park on top of a drain. That's another problem. So that condos have a situation where they have parking, and then they have the need to remove the cars to do a thorough cleaning. And a lot of times people don't move their cars. And where does that leave the association who's liable? And so that the condos have to have rules and regulations in the event of a snow emergency, that if cars aren't removed within a certain time frame, they have to be towed.
We have that same thing in my apartment complex. You have after like almost a couple hours after, you have to move your car to the other. After it's been, they usually plow what's open, and then you have to move your car into those spots so that they can plow the rest. And if you don't, they'll tow your car.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all over the place. Even in the city or a downtown area, if you're in a parking area and they need to plow, you have to have your car removed or they'll tow it.
Right.
Well, we have to go to a break.
Okay.
We're going to continue talking about this when we come back. We're talking with Howard Goldman of Goldman & Pease real estate law firm of real estate and litigation, and we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network. And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with Eric Wilson, and we've been talking with Howard Goldman of Goldman & Pease Law Firms, Real Estate and Litigation. And we're talking a little bit about winter weather and how it affects property and how people sue crazy.
No, they certainly can be. I just want to talk a little bit about what you can do to protect yourself if you're a business owner or a landowner, and we've highlighted some of the risks. And so, it's important to get a quality snowplow removal company that has experience and knows what they're doing. And then ultimately that relationship is confirmed with an agreement. And it's important that certain things are done in that agreement. First, most properties have certain designated areas that need to be plowed or need to stay away from. So it's important to stake those areas. For example, if there's a fire alarm box on the complex, you have to mark that so it doesn't get smashed and it's available in case of an emergency. If there are mailboxes, say in a residential condominium or a complex apartments, people want to get their mail, even if it's after a snowstorm. And so sometimes snowplow companies push the snow right up to the mailboxes and make it nearly impossible to navigate that. It's important to them that there is sandboxes available that people can use, and that the management company can have access to, and that they have to keep appropriate inventory of salt and ice on the property. And if there's these types of facilities, you need a shovel or something, and ongoing maintenance. So give the lawful visitor the tools to be able to keep these sensitive spots clear of snow and ice.
But now we talked about the snow and the ice because it snowed.
Right.
Most of the time, or it rained. What happens if you have a clear parking lot? It hasn't snowed in months, but it's 8 degrees out, and someone spills a cup of coffee in your parking lot, and then someone's walking to your business and they slip.
Yeah, well, that's will not be actionable because a cup of coffee in a parking lot, wow, there's all kinds of garbage and things out there. So those aren't the cases that should result in a recovery. We're in a litigious environment. People might sue. I mean, we hear about the hot cup of coffee at McDonald's, but
Right.
We're talking about real conditions that exist where snow and ice builds up, and because of the change by the courts in this case that came down just recently by the SJC, there's a heightened duty on owners to do more. And it's not just enough to say, we're in New England, we have to expect snow and ice. You have to take reasonable steps to keep the property free of hazards. And so plowing and being vigilant, because ice piles will melt if it gets warm, and they're going to freeze up, and that will create black ice. It's very difficult to see. So have the tools available, and have a format in advance with the snowplow company. If there's 3 inches of snow, they should shovel or plow. Don't wait to have to call them. Have it anticipated, a program in place, thought about in advance that works. And also, I just want to mention the concept of insurance, that if all things go wrong, that you want to protect yourselves, that there's insurance policy and a staff of lawyers, defense. They provide defense of these claims and to help to weather through the bumps. And so, there's no bright line, and the more intense of a use of the property, the greater the duty is to maintain it. And we talked before about some of the different towns that have ordinances, and we talked about Boston that has the obligation to remove snow 3 hours after a storm stops, or if it's nightfall, that 3 hours once it becomes light. But a lot of other towns are much more liberal, and they give you, I think Cambridge gives you up to 12 hours to clear. But the obligation of properties is to also clear walkways that are owned by the town. And so you don't have to own the property to be responsible. If there's a walkway in front of your house that's public in any town, there's some duty to maintain it free of snow and ice.
Now, what if you just don't want to clear? Let's say you live on the street. Let's say it's a condominium. So they clear the sidewalk and they clear the main street that the condominium's on. But your walkway to your house or your apartment, whatever it is, where you're responsible for clearing. Now, if you're not expecting people or you don't use that entrance, you don't clear it.
Well, that sort of requires us to pour into condominium documents. And the master deed it kind of determines, is this common area? Is it exclusive use common area? So often what you kind of described was you've got the general common areas maintained by the association, and then you have exclusive use common area, which typically is the responsibility of the owner, the unit owner, and not the association. So in that instance, what could happen is it could be a guest, and the guest slips and fall on this exclusive use common area, and the guest isn't going to know whose obligation it was, and so they probably would sue the association, seeing that there's the larger, the more deep pocket, and probably also sue the owner of the property. And so you've got that two defendants now, and sometimes they create inconsistencies which benefits the plaintiff. And by the way, unit owners of condos can have their own HO6 insurance policies to protect them against the situation you described. And so also when you allocate the risk of who's responsible, it's important to have indemnity language in which the owner of the property is released from liability because there's an experienced snowplow company involved. And it's important that you make sure these clauses are in the contracts get signed, and if there are requirements to maintain insurance, that you see that there's a certificate of insurance. Because we've heard situations where insurance certificates are canceled and insurance that people thought was there is not. So it's important to be vigilant. So we have all kind of fronts. And I mentioned if there is a slip and fall, it's important to timely notify your insurance carrier. They come out and do their investigation, and it's important to document what we have. And so if the factors are kind of, heavy snow, reasonable efforts were made to clear the property, and it's unfortunate there was a slip and fall, those are all mitigating factors that would reduce the likelihood of the property owner being responsible.
But
I was going to say, who deems it reasonable amount of cleaning? Would that be up to the judge?
Yeah, so the judge or jury decides the facts, and in these personal injury cases, often a jury. And, juries are stingy these days. They know that there's a lot of claims that are hyped up or maybe even bogus, or people kind of inflate the numbers. And juries have become very stingy in Massachusetts and really throughout the country. And they don't want to grant a large judgment and end up seeing insurance rates increase. And so you really have to be credible as a witness, as a person who's been victimized. And if the stories don't jive, if the damages are trumped up, the juries know that. And they're not going to come back with even a judgment at all.
But now what was it, Papadopoulos?
Yes.
And Target?
You can get that name right.
Didn't I did a good job on that name.
Papadopoulos.
Target being probably an enormous parking lot, I would consider that an enormous parking lot.
Yeah, it was big.
And also their retail space is probably a pretty good size. Mm-hmm. They get a lot of people flowing in and out of those buildings and the parking lots. So they must have quite a few of these suits that go on because, there's, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to avoid having icy areas, especially like today it's 18 degrees. The other day it's 8 degrees. You're going to have those until someone really gets out there and throws the salt or whatever.
No, Rick, you're right that we have snow and ice in New England. It's cold, and it's going to happen. We all see it all over. We see ice, and so there's a balancing test that a court or jury will consider, and they look at the factors. And so in the Target case, they did some snow plowing, but the court determined that they stacked the snow too high, that they didn't anticipate when it melts it will ice up again. And so, yeah, that was a close call, and that's what surprised a lot of lawyers that look at these negligence issues. And so the takeaway for Target, any large vendor of retail space, is that you really need somebody there on site with salt spread and related matters to make sure it doesn't happen. But again, the property owner is not a guarantor because we will have snow and ice. It's what level in light of all the facts and circumstances. And if you have a active area, you have to have more personnel on site.
So basically, when you're making a decision on who you're going to have to maintain that, you have to make sure that they're going to be there constantly, monitoring.
Or like a manager who opens the store in the morning, he may take a quick drive up and down each of the lanes that people are going to be parking in. And
but you also want to make sure that whoever's snow removal or any other things that have to do with the ice melting, they have to be right on top of that. It's not something.
I would assume it's more of what we're talking about here is days after it's been plowed. Because when it's usually plowed, everyone usually walks fairly slow and very nervous of ice below their feet because they can't really see it right after plowing. But the sun hits it a while, cleans the parking lot, looks good. Now you got black ice.
It's a balancing test. I was walking to the gym about a month ago, and they had
You were walking to the gym?
Well, actually, I parked my car.
I was like, you walked to the gym. You walked to the gym. You already worked out getting there.
I parked the car, and I was walking to the gym, and they had repaved it recently, and that there was a pooling effect into a drain. And I kind of saw the black ice, and then I slipped, and I fell. And next thing I know, within seconds, I was on my back, and that hurt. And
a good
that was the end of the gym.
And I noticed that when I came out about an hour and a half later that there was ice over there. So that's a situation where, based on the kind of the contours of the land and that there was a drain situation going on there, that the gym probably knew that this was an area that they needed to snow and ice. And also, has it happened before? And do they keep records? So if it's people have complained, and that the plaintiff finds out that there were previous complaints and no action was done, that's further evidence of negligence. If it's never happened before, once in a lifetime, that's less of a foreseeability. And so a negligence is a balancing of foreseeable risk, the cost to fix it, the high traffic flow, and so it's a balancing test. And a lot of times people are negligent themselves. They may have their bags too heavy. They were on the phone. They had a kid that they were carrying. And so people can contribute themselves, and that the judge or jury factors the contributory negligence into a decision whether or not a landowner is liable. Well, so there is a balance, gentlemen. There is a balance.
The main thing is they have to be as responsible as they can be if you're a property owner. You've got to take that obligation of making sure your parking lot is as clear as it can be. The snow mounds aren't piled like a skyscraper.
Continually maintained.
Yeah, and continuously maintain that until the season's over.
Right.
And it's important to keep records because if you're conscientious and you do a lot of the work, you do a lot of the cleanup, keep records. And qualified snowplow companies will keep records of when they've been out there. And the more time that there's activity, the less likely it is that a owner will be liable for negligence.
Now, that's one of the nice parts about having a property management company. Most of the time, they would have records of every time something has been done to the property, whether it's plowing or cutting the lawn or whatever.
Yeah, so record keeping is important. Listen, that the manager or the snowplow company, they're getting paid to be there. So, one of the conflicts we see is that the snowplow companies come too much. That they come after 1 inch of snow, maybe they should wait for 3.
Right.
And so there's a balance, and people that the treasurers that have to maintain the books and records, push back and say we need you here as much. And and so there's a give and take there. The cost. I mean, you have to factor in how much does it cost to get a clean parking lot, and there's a lot of pushback, and there's a limited resources, and the judge and jury will take that into account.
Now, last time you were on the show, Howard, we were talking about condominium law. And is that a term? Condominium law?
Oh, sure.
Condo law.
Condo law, yeah. Because I haven't seen one of those TV shows yet.
Yeah.
It's criminal law,
Well,
yeah. No condo law. So what is
it's probably
going
just as violent, though.
Probably.
They do live next door to each other,
Now that I'm thinking, it'll probably make a good show.
It really would.
So anything new happening in the condo law?
Well, listen, condominiums offer great opportunity to live together and have shared common expenses and amenities that you might not ordinarily have. The flip is you have to live together in kind of confined quarters. And so we constantly have complaints and work with condo boards and unit owners that are struggling over noise, animals, pets that maybe or one is allergic to and the owner kind of likes it, nuisances, disturbances, illegal modification of the units, or sometimes people don't pay condo fees. So condominium are growing in size and popularity. The values are solid and going up, but people have to get along, and in close quarters with scarce resources, that is problematic.
Yeah, what's funny is it totally makes sense fiscally, joining the condo community, doing all that. It's just I can't imagine that, and it's crazy. We're still growing in that way because I know how hard it is just after these holidays spending time with my family. And I lived in the same house with them, Now you're literally sharing next door neighbor with a complete stranger.
That's right. So, if you buy in a small condo and it's a partnership. You have to meet periodically to develop a budget and talk about snowplow obligations or cutting the grass. And some people are more disagreeable than others. Mm-hmm. They may travel. They may have
the Ricks of the world. So
financial adversities. There may be a divorce thrown in there, a bankruptcy.
Yeah, and your family said the same thing about you.
Right, exactly.
So your family must have been glad to send you off and send you out to a condo.
100%. I mean, everyone loves the fact that you have your own space, your own identity. But again, when you live in a apartment complex or even in a condo community where you have more skin in the game in a condo than you in an apartment, you really have to get along with people, and people tend to not get along with each other because they're both. I
wonder if it's as big a problem when you go into a condominium complex or a condominium building that is $800,000 up to like $10 million condominium.
Sounds like your house.
Yeah, right.
Well, the $10 million one is mine.
He lives next to Tom and Giselle.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
In Marina Bay.
We go out together.
I know.
We have dinner, but it would it be less issues in something like that because you probably don't have those people.
Well, what's interesting, we find that some of the higher end condos, people are much more particular. It has to be impeccable, and they're very critical. Whereas sometimes the associations that are more blue collar, hardworking people, like the three of us, right? They can their tolerance is higher because they struggle every day, and so they have a little more tolerance. But living in close quarters, people get on each other's nerves, and it could be a pet, a loud pet that barks when the owner's not there, but it drives the person who is there crazy.
Music,
or noise.
The way you listen to your TV at night. That can
Eric, you're a younger guy. You probably like loud music.
Right? Loud music.
I'm an older guy, and I like to go to sleep earlier.
Till 1, you probably go to bed at 10. I'm listening to my TV at 55 volume just because I'm cooking something in the microwave and I'm too lazy to turn it down. You might be sleeping next door like this kid is driving me crazy.
We had a situation ongoing about bed bugs, and so that happens in all kinds of facilities. It happens in hotels, but also happens in residential, and they spread amazing through the pipes. And if one person's a little bit messy, it can lead to a mess in the building. And so you need access to get into these units. You have to spray, and people have to cooperate, and that presents a whole series of problems.
That brings up another question. What happens in a case like that where you have an immaculate place, it's spotless, and bed bugs that someone brought in from another part of the building comes into your
You
apartment.
chase that guy around.
Yeah,
with a
and then you
pitchfork.
get infections, from
You chase him through the town.
whatever.
With a pitchfork.
Can you sue the association for something like that?
Well, bed bugs, it's tough to source it out, but what was something where that's more practical that we see is, what if the person above you in a high-rise condominium has an HVAC unit that's leaking and doesn't want to fix it, or it needs to be replaced? And so over the course of years that you have periodic leaks when it's a heavy rainstorm or in the summertime when the AC is working, and that happens. And so when the water trickles down, or if it's a toilet that overflows with the tenant who really doesn't care, or the shower curtain is not preventing water from overflowing, and so it's gradual ongoing water leaks, you have mold. And mold sort of formulates itself, and it creates a whole series of problems, and it's very costly to remediate, and often insurance policies exclude mold remediation. And so that's a tip of the iceberg of some of the nuisances that we have when people don't properly maintain their units.
Well, we got to go to a break, Howard. But we're talking with Howard Goldman of Goldman and Pease Law Firm, Real Estate and Litigation Law. Well, litigation, I guess you assume it's law. And we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
Rick Kaplan is right here on the Money Matters Radio Network.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with Eric Wilson, and we'll be talking with Howard Goldman of Goldman and Pease Law Firm, Real Estate and Litigation. And we're coming to a close of another show.
We are.
Sadly to say. But we had a good conversation talking about this winter weather we've been having and all the issues that can come about. Mm-hmm. But before we go to end the show, I wanted to remind everyone about January 29th, NEREJ's Cocktails and Conversation at the Hyatt Regency in Boston.
That's a Wednesday night.
It's a Wednesday. Is it a Wednesday night?
It's a Wednesday night.
Oh.
And who's going to be there? Who was the invitee?
Right now, our invitee is we have developers, brokers, lawyers, property managers, and a lot of service companies that provide. So you will have, pavers. You'll have, I know a lot of marketing companies will be there as well. You'll have.
We have software companies for the industry.
Sounds like a great event.
It is.
You said it's at the Hyatt
at the Hyatt Regency.
Nice.
And it should incorporate 200 professionals from about 16 different commercial real estate related industries.
We do these all throughout New England.
Mm-hmm.
This is our second year around in Boston.
Yeah, we do. Northern New England is in Portsmouth.
In April we'll be in Northern New England.
Yeah. And then we do Providence.
Did you have an open mic? That could be a nice draw for people that can say a few jokes.
No, we tried that.
Yeah, we did try that in Connecticut, and
we have to shut down the mic.
Yeah, it's funny. Most people they go to these events. I do a lot of networking, and speakers are great, but most people go there to see and network. The speakers.
But one of the
topic.
and plus all week long the speakers.
Right.
Everywhere you go, there's a speaker.
Right.
Well, Rick, I don't want to speak over here, but I know we're going to an IREM event coming up.
That's right.
That's where you guys met last year,
That's
correct?
right.
A great ski outing on a Friday. Take the Friday off and ski. Wow. And
That was an incredible outing.
It was the IREM network event.
Yeah, we had a great time.
And that's where you guys met last year, correct?
That's where I met Howard. Yeah.
Nice.
No, I don't remember you skiing all that much. I kind of remember you sipping hot chocolate a lot. And,
I did ski a little. Maybe
you went out. Didn't you go up in your skinny jeans?
Yeah, about three.
Rick was skiing in the '80s with his high tops and skinny jeans.
I was 14 years old.
Oh wow!
Stonewashed skinnies.
But in the past 20 years, if I get to ski once a year, it's a lot.
I'm the same way. The body isn't what it used to be. A fall is pretty difficult to recover from.
Yeah.
You try not to fall. Even
Right. So,
still going to double black diamonds?
Yeah. I stay as far away from them as possible. But, I still enjoy it. And we had a great time.
Yeah, it's a nice, and a Friday afternoon skiing, it shouldn't be too crowded.
But you're a young guy.
That's
Howard.
a good life.
You're not like me.
Well, we feel young.
I don't
But
ski.
what's the date on that?
February 6th.
February 6th.
It's a Friday.
Yep. Friday, February 6th, a week after our event, and that's how I knew. By the way, our event was on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Because it's 31 days in January, which would mean Friday would be 31st. 7 days from then, it's February 6th, right?
And
Or would that be a
January
Thursday?
27th, CCIM is having in New England CCIM is having a breakfast. Actually, it's a luncheon, I think.
Okay.
In Boston as well. I
Luncheons are
don't-
better than breakfasts.
Yeah, I don't have the exact specifics.
But
yet.
you can go to ccim.com,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you can find
You
it.
can.
Or talk to the Google machine. She tells you
The
everything.
Google machine.
She
Hey,
tells
listen,
you
I hope
everything.
nobody slips and falls on the way out there. Maybe you should bring some salt yourself in
Right.
the back of your car.
But if they do,
Although
they can call you, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's right. You know,
We defend and also prosecute
yes,
claims.
And
Playing
now I
both
know-
sides of the
You
field,
know,
I
I
love
mean,
it.
now I know little bit about the trick. So you know,
Yeah, but,
But-
you totally believe it's all your responsibility, right?
unless I fall.
Oh,
But you know
unless it's
something.
you who falls.
but you know something. It takes a serious fall that results in broken bones, and you know this the bump and bruises isn't going to result in a lawsuit. So it takes a really severe case, and you know if somebody is older or infirm. And they slip and fall. It's a so-called eggshell plaintiff, and
Right.
the defendant takes that person as they are. But you guys seem like you're in great shape, and
I am definitely, Howard.
So you're nimble.
Yeah.
If you're about to fall, you
I
can
walk
hold
to the
yourself.
Now,
gym,
if
but-
someone wanted to get a hold of you, Howard, how would they reach you?
Sure. So we're located in Needham. Our phone number is 781-292-1080. And more importantly, visit us at our website, goldmanpeas.com. And we have a lot of talking points and articles we've written about snow and ice and other things. So, hey, you know, it's been a pleasure to be on the show today.
Thanks
and
for
I
coming.
appreciate a chance
Yeah,
to talk
thank
a
you
little
for
bit about
coming in,
this.
Howard. And this deal is done.